pawb wedi cyrraedd i fewn yn eitha, neu jyst croesawu Arwyn i ddeud rhagau'r a gychwyn y cyfarfod yma. Felly drosodd i chdi Arwyn, diolch o galon.
Bore da i chi gyd. A croeso cynnes, dwi'n meddwl heddiw, mae'r tywydd o'n plaid ni allan yn fan hyn, dyn ni'n swyddo bai Colin yn fan hyn, yn gobeithio bod hi'n yr awyr yn las a draws y gogledd, a bod hwnnw cyfarfod o awyr las, dyn ni eisiau yn edrych ar y weledigaeth a'r cyfeiriad a sut dyn ni'n mynd i weithio hefo'n gilydd. Ac yn dilyn y trafodaethau dyn ni wedi gael yn ystod yr wythnos yma, pryd oedd dydd Llun, di Mercher di heddiw yn dydd Llun, y cyfarfod cyntaf, dyn ni'n dechrau teimlo wan bod yr is-adeiledd yn dechrau ffitio fewn i'w le, a bod ni bore yma, dyn ni'n mynd i fedru torchi llewis go iawn a mynd i'r afel a i ganol yr agenda o sut dyn ni'n di gydweithio efo'n gilydd, dysgu ochr yn ochr, ar gyfer y daith dyn ni'n mynd i gerdded ar ei hyd i. Croeso arbennig unwaith eto i'r athro Graham Donaldson. A warm welcome, Graham, and I hope the Scottish weather is as pleasant as it is in North Wales here this morning. I can see through the windows of some of the participants in the office, and it looks to be quite bright first thing in the morning. I don't know if that's an illusion, but how are things up in Scotland?
Sorry, Arwyn, I was struggling to find the unmute button there. Yeah, no, it's sunny here in Scotland after a very wet yesterday, so it's looking good.
And from our conversations in the last couple of days, Graham, if we think we've got a challenge here in Wales, I think the challenge you're presenting yourself in Scotland is a very steep one as well.
Yes, I mean, I think the process of curriculum reform in Scotland, which has now been going on for about 15, 16 years since it effectively started. The big message from the Scottish experience is don't lose your way, don't lose sight of what it is that the curriculum reform was about originally through the passage of time. And I think that the kind of process that we're engaged in just now in establishing a very firm and shared understanding of why we have this curriculum, what it's for, why it will benefit young people, and how we propose to put it into practice collectively, working together on it rather than it happening individually. I think all of those messages are very, very, very important. And for secondary colleagues, the bit that comes next, and that is how does all this relate to what will happen with qualifications? Again, a big message from Scotland is we need to get that right. We need to get the articulation, the move from what happens up to age 14, 15 through into qualifications. That should build seamlessly. So again, this next stage, the qualification stage, again for secondary schools in particular, is very important. So we're at, I think, a really interesting time in Wales, and I think as I've said before, I think Wales is particularly well placed because it's had the debate. It's particularly well placed to move quickly into building the kind of education system post-pandemic that we want to see. So days like today are just so important in terms of making sure that we can make that a reality.
Diolch, Graham. Un o gryfderau Graham, fel wneud pawb yn y grŵp ydi arfer efo fo, sech chi'n gweithio efo fo'r blaen, ydi gwneud yn siŵr bod yn traed ni ar y ddaear a bod ni yn wirioneddol canolbwyntio ar be'n union di pwrpas be dyn ni'n neud. Felly bore yma, mae gennym ni agenda, mae'n eiro sy'n gyda chi bach o adborth i ni o'r cyfarfod y dechrau'r wythnos. Dath ni sôn dechrau yn y cyfarfod diwetha am rhoi lleoliad i ddal yr holl wybodaeth, a mae Euros ni'n sôn am hynny. Wedyn, dyn ni'n torchi llewis go iawn wedyn, a mae Nicola a Claire yn mynd i arwain i drwy ddatbacio dwy elfen o'r meysydd dysgu a profiad. Wedyn, mae Graham yn mynd i'n tywys ni drwy y drafodaeth am beth sydd wedi dod allan o'r Journey to Rollout 2022, sef beth ydy datganiad cwricwlwm lefel uchel. A gyda ni gael sgwrs a chydig bach o drafodaeth am hynny, paned, ac wedyn torchi llewis ar ôl paned a'r cyflechu hi wedyn i wneud synwyr o'r cwbl a sut ni wedi ddatblygu hwn yn y blaenau a gwneud y synwyr fel y Graham yn sôn amdano fo, gwneud yn ymarferol i chi yn yr ysgolion, deall y broses a edrych ymlaen i'r cylch i pan ni'n cyfarfod nesaf yn mis Tachwedd. Felly drosodd yn ôl i chdi, Euros, ac wedyn gei di tywys ni drwy'r camau nesaf.
Diolch Galon Arwyn. Bydda i ddim yn hir yn mynd dro hwn gobeithio. Dwi wedi rhannu'r sgrin o'ch chi rwan, ydych chi'n gweld hwnna? Ia. Be mae rhai nhw wedi wneud i ni chwarae teg wedi gosod ardal Teams i fyny ni, lle da ni'n mynd i allu cadw'r holl wybodaeth yn dilyn y cyfarfodydd yma. Felly mae gennych chi dudalen lanio gyffredinol, wedyn yn y ffeiliau, ydych chi bostio unrhyw bost o'ch eisiau fanna, wedyn yn y ffeiliau, beth da ni'n mynd i wneud ydy, mwyn i yn glir i bawb, bob un cyfarfod fyddwn ni'n gael, mi fyddwn ni yn nodi y cyfarfod a fyddwn ni rhaid unrhyw wybodaeth i fewn yn yr ardal yna, fel bod yna ddim traffaeth i chi ddod o hyd iddyn nhw. Felly mae agenda cyfarfodwytho ni a cyflwyniad y cyfarfod i fewn yn y fan honno i chi. Felly bod yn hawdd i chi gael mynediad iddyn nhw. Hefyd, be da ni wedi gynnwys ydy rhestr o grwpiau. Felly mae gennym ni'r mathemateg ar rhifedd y fanna a hefyd y 7 grŵp arall sydd gennym ni felly. Wedyn, oedd i fewn i heini wedyn, petai ni'n mynd i fewn i'r dyniaethau falle. Be fyddwn ni yn greu yn y fan honno fydd grŵp sydd efo'r teitl y thema fydd ni wedi bod yn drafod. Felly, yn amlwg yn ystod yr wythnos yma, fydd gennym ni deitl i fewn y fan o datgloi y datganiadau o'r hyn sy'n bwysig. Wedyn, unrhyw beth sy'n cael ei ddatblygu yn lleol neu'n rhanbarthol i chi roi nhw fewn yn y ffeil yna fel bod gennym ni drefn o'i ffeilio nhw yn y fan honno. So, ni wedi creu y ffeil yn y fan honno i chi. Nyn ni yrru cyfarwyddiadau i chi, ond swn i yn gofyn yn garedig pan da chi yn uwchlwytho stwff i fewn i'r ffeil yna, bod chi ar flaen unrhyw ffeil, bod chi'n rhoi rhif yr sir yna. Bod o'n 661 neu 635 neu bynnag ydy'r rhif y sir, a fydd o'n lot haws i ni wedyn allu cadw trefn o ran yr adnoddau sydd yn dod i fewn o bob sir. Mi fyddwn ni erbyn dydd Gwener wedi ychwanegu chi gyd i'r tîm yma, fel bod chi'n gallu cael mynediad yn rhwydd iddo fo, ac yn y fan honno, ydych chi gynnal y trafodaethau, sgwrsiau a rhannu unrhyw bost ydych chi eisiau gwneud oddi fewn i fanna fel tîm rhanbarthol, fel bod chi'n mynd i cychwyn y sgwrsiau yn y fan honno. Felly dyna chi sydyn ar y Teams. Dwi wedyn, fel mae rhywun wedi dweud, wedi gael os ni jyst rhoi trosolwg i chi o be drafodwyd dydd Llun hefo grwpiau lleol. Fe gaethon ni drwy draw, yn yr ein chi, dwi'n siŵr, yn rhan o cyfarfodydd, ond yn dros 260 o unigolyn wedi troi fyny i'r cyfarfod yna. Mae'r enwau yn parhau ddod i fewn. Da ni'n cael o leia 10 enw bob dydd bron parhau fod nhw'n rhan o'r rhwydweithiau yma. Felly, da ni'n hynod ddiolchgar bod gymaint o frwdfrydedd ar ei gyfer o. A mae o'n ffordd o symud y system gyfan yn ei blaen, dydy. Yn ysgolion unigol bod ni'n symud y system gyfan i blaen. Felly, dyma chi math o gwestiynau fyddwn ni'n ofyn, di'r gwaith ar gyfer tymor yma'n glir, falch iawn o weld bod pawb yn cyfarfod sy'n ddim bech yn dweud fod yn. Gofyn nhw wedyn, be ydy disgwyliadau nhw ran o gwaith yma. Felly, maen nhw wedi nodi yn fanna be ydy disgwyliadau nhw, pa adnoddau maen nhw angen, be mae ysgolion yn wneud ar hyn o bryd, cychwyn sgwrs oedd hon, be maen nhw'n wneud ar hyn o bryd o ran y datganiadau o'r hyn sy'n bwysig. Da chi'n gweld o fan o hollol agored, hollol onest, dim llawer yn digwydd ar hyn o bryd yn yr ysgol. Felly, da ni'n gwybod wedyn o syniad lle da ni'n cychwyn, a heddiw hefyd be di'r dysgu sydd wedi digwydd hyd yn hyn. Mi fyddwch chi fel aelodau o'r grŵp rhanbarthol yn cael copi neu link i'r Padlet yma, dwi'n siŵr bod Ruth yn mynd i roed o fewn yn y chat i chi, a wedyn fedwch chi fel aelod rhanbarthol wedyn weld yn union be mae aelodau'r grŵp lleol yn dweud lle maen nhw'n teimlo fan nhw arni ar y gwahanol agwedd yma. A dwi'n meddwl bod hynny yn mynd i fod yn bwerus iawn i chi gael golwg yna fo cyn eich trafodaethau chi yn ystod eich cyfarfod lleol nesaf chi. Felly dwi'n gwybdaeth go iawn I chi o ran lle da ni wedi cyrraedd o ran y gwaith yma hyd yn hyn. Mi fyddwn ni'n codi unrhyw waith gweithdrefnol I fyny ar ddiwedd y cyfarfod os oes unrhyw gwestiynau'n codi, ond da ni ddim yn mynd I fynd I fanylder o ran hynny rwan, achos dwi ddim eisiau dwy'n amser Claire nac y chwaith Nicola os nhw'n mynd ati wneud y cyflwyniadau yma I ni rwan. Hynod ddiolchgar i'r ddwy yn nhw am ymateb ar fyrybydd I roi cyflwyniad I ni ar sut maen nhw wedi mynd ati I ddadgloi'r datganiadau, a dwi'n saff ydych chi gyd yn gweld hein yn fuddiol iawn. Felly dwi'n ymwybodol na Nicola sydd yn mynd I rannu sgrin ac yn mynd I roi cyflwyniad gyntaf ni. Felly, over to you, Nicola. Diolch yn fawr.
Morning, everybody. Just bear with me a moment. I'm just having a bit of... Everyone's face is in the way. Move that out of the way. Okay, can you let me know if it's on screen?
That's fine now, Nicola.
Okay. I've only got 10 minutes and I've got an awful lot to talk about, so I'll try and speed things up a little bit. But for those of you who've heard me talk about the curriculum before, you'll know that I often use an analogy of a building in development to represent the framework. The image is meant to represent how we are constantly building on what's gone before, on the knowledge and experiences our children and young people have gained so far. The foundations and some of the pillars are fundamental and must be present if we're going to secure a deep understanding of the big ideas, the statements of what matter within the curriculum for Wales framework. But there's also some space and flexibility within the building and our framework for schools and teachers to make choices about what they're going to teach and how they're going to teach it. It's really hard at this point in time to see what it's going to look like at the end. Will there ever be an end? Oh, sorry. So will there ever be an end? But what we do know is that the four purposes are central to all that we do. So as we move forward, I'm just going to talk you through how we've gone about looking at the statements of what matter. So how do we make sense of them? Why does it matter? The statements are big ideas, the most important elements of each of the areas of learning and experience. And they can be used to answer the question, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why does expressive arts matter? Because responding and reflecting both as an artist and an audience is a fundamental part of learning in the expressive arts. Why does health and well-being matter? Because developing physical health and well-being has lifelong benefits. And we can go through all those what matters statements, the 27, and use them to answer that question. So we've got an example there for literacy, languages and communication, and maths and numeracy. So I'm a science teacher. I've left the classroom for a while now, but science is where my expertise lies. What you've got there, you can't see it very well because it's an A3 document, but I've just screenshot it and I'm going to talk you through how we've gone about unpacking one of those what matters statements. So the one I'm going to talk you through is that one in the blue box there. The world around us is full of living things which depend on each other for survival. On that sheet, there's some questions, a series of questions that we've used to try and unpack and make sense of that what matters statement. So I'm going to go through those. So the what matters statement explains why it's important for children and young people to develop an understanding of this area. The statement is an overarching concept and the rationale that comes with it, and you can see the rationale for this one here, it gives you that clear overview of where the learning leads, the destination, and it should be used as part of curriculum design and the planning process. That statement answers that question. So why does it matter? Because the world around us is full of living things which depend on each other for survival. Each of them and that accompanying rationale explains why it matters. In this case, it's about survival being essential as a result of evolution and it being impacted by a wide variety of factors such as human beings and the environment. So what we need to be able to do is pick out the key concepts that need to be developed within each statement. So here I've highlighted them in this example. So we've got diversity of living things, evolution, conditions and resources needed for survival, and competition between species, the impact of humans on biodiversity and the environment. We've got structures and functions of living things. We've got the life processes, and we've got health and disease. So those are our key concepts. Those are the ones that are really important, and we really need to understand the knowledge and skills and how learning progresses from a simple level to more expert understanding as we explore them and develop the learner's understanding over time throughout the continuum. So when we think about progression, we need to really be clear about what it is. Progression in learning connects knowledge, concepts and skills. When it's clear and understood, it enables teachers to focus on the important learning goals, centering their attention on what a child or young person will learn rather than what they'll do. So it's not about the learning activity. It's really important that we remember that mastery takes time. It doesn't happen in 1 year. It's a long goal process. It doesn't always happen uniformly. And if teachers know how that learning moves forwards and backwards along that progression, along that continuum, you've got greater flexibility in how you plan for that learning. So if we just pick out some of those on there, we've got what it is. It's moving towards more expert understanding. It's that sophisticated way of thinking, gaining more expertise, developing an understanding and the skills within a domain. It's specific to that domain. There's those connections between what comes before and afterwards. And that last one there, branching out and forming connections between the ideas related to the core, in this example, the scientific concepts or big ideas. What it isn't what they do in 1 year. So for example, the year 7 science curriculum. It's not just that body of content. It's not activity driven or a single task. And it's not a series of statements that we tick off and we say that you've passed it and that you've achieved that progression step. It's that long-term goal, that long learning. So if we look at some of those questions that were on that sheet, so we've got, how can we make it real and draw on the experiences of the learner and community? So obviously for the different what matters statement and your locality, you can explore that further. I've just put some key examples on here. I haven't made it specific to any particular local area, but we've got those key concepts in blue, and then we've got different ways that we could explore those. So we've got the red and grey squirrel debate happening on Anglesey, house building, loss of green spaces, life cycles, health and pathogens, specific ones for your local area. So if you've had an outbreak of scarlet fever, that might be one of those communicable diseases that you look at. Sunburn, burns, making it specific to your learners. So within the statement, it doesn't exemplify any particular health issues or diseases. You can explore those within that flexibility of the framework. So as we move on, how does it support the 4 purposes? So obviously central to our curriculum, they should be the end goal for our learners. We should be in pursuit of those at all times. So we've got the 4 purposes, and you can see just from that snapshot on there, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but we could look at conservation as enterprising creative contributors, thinking creatively about the problems facing humanity in ethical informed citizens, becoming ambitious, capable learners, building up that body of knowledge, linking those different concepts together and deepening their understanding and making informed decisions as healthy, confident individuals. The next one, what experiences could support the learning in this area? So lots of experiences they could do, from sampling biodiversity, exploring the local areas, and there's also a wealth of people out there who can help us, from STEM gogglers to park rangers to the zoos that we've got in our local area. So remembering that experiences, it's that bringing together of the knowledge and skills to develop and deepen their understanding. We've got to make sure that we're focused on progression as we move through. The next box looks at opportunities to address any of those cross-cutting themes. So here we've got careers and work-related education. Obviously, with all that we do, careers and work-related education is key. There are many career opportunities that can be drawn from this area of learning. Diversity, recognising and supporting differences. We look at variation here amongst species, within the human race as well. Sex, gender and sexuality. The difference between sex and gender, that's causing an awful lot of confusion out there at the moment. Local, national and international contexts, opportunities to explore local habitats and comparisons of our health and health systems nationally and both internationally really comes to its own in this area. And again, key remembering to focus on progression. What does that look like at 3? What does that look like at 16? And then we've got other connections to it and links to other what matters statements and areas of learning that we could explore. So within science and tech, we could look at that what matters statement, which is the first one, being curious. It's the old scientific inquiry. It's looking for answers, making sense of situations. In languages, literacy and communication, obviously we need to draw on the literacy skills. We could use stories from literature to set the context, the importance of root words and names of organisms. Humanities, we've got some links there with the physical processes and human interactions that impact on the environment and biodiversity. And health and well-being, we've got crossovers with diets and decision making. So those are the boxes that are on there. And then this last bit that I just want to talk to you about is just how we use the descriptions of learning to ensure that we've got depth. So once we've got that clear understanding from the statements of what matters and the rationale, we can start planning that journey. So here's an example of the progression steps within that what matters statement. So if we focus on progression step 3, we need to build that gap between those statements at 2 and 3. So you just have a look at this example here. So where do we start with unpacking? What's really important that we don't just shut that case and rely on our experiences to form assumptions when we're planning that learning. We've got to really think about what happened before. So here's the learning that would have happened at progression step 2. Then we move on to the learning at progression step 3, but there's 3 years of learning that happens between those 2 steps that we've got to unpack and make sense of. So we just have a look at, those are the key concepts. We've got life cycles, features of living things, personal impact, and then here's how we'd go about unpacking and making sense of it. And you can see the different learning that would happen along that journey between those 3 years of development. So we take that idea of food production, we'd look at food chains, we'd look at producers, we'd look at feeding relationships, we'd also look at nutrition and the beginnings of the biochemistry, and we take that learning forward so you can see how it develops. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to scoot on. You will have a copy of this. So what could that learning look like, just to finish off? So here's an example here. It's taken from the BBC Discover Wildlife. So this is some really recent science. Due to climate change, polar bears and grizzly bears have been coming into contact and producing fertile young. So the question there, how should we consider these bears one species? And then all the learning that they've gone through within this area of learning and this specific what matters statement, so those are the key concepts that I mentioned at the beginning, they will have supported a pupil to develop their understanding and allow them produce an argument for that answer. So from the exploration of local habitats, recognizing the differences between organisms and thinking about their impact on the environment in the early years, to considering feeding relationships, simple adaptations and life processes as they progress through primary, to understand how natural selection leads to evolution and the causes and consequences of climate change, all builds their understanding of that big idea of the world around us being full of living things which depend on each other for survival. I'm going to stop there and stop sharing my screen. I'm sorry I've gone so fast. Hopefully you've taken some in from there, and I'm going to hand over to Claire.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Nicola. Fel ddedodd Nicola, mi fydd ei chyflwyniad i ar gael yn ardal y Teams, a hefyd fe gennych chi recordiad hefyd bydd, lle nhw'n ni drosodd rwan i Claire. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Claire.
Eiros, cyn i Claire ddechrau, dwi'n meddwl bod hi'n bwysig bod pawb yn cymeryd yr egwyddorion, beth bynnag i'r maes dysgu a profiad, yr egwyddorion, dwi'n bynnag gwyddoniaeth a Nicola'n ganolbwyntio, mae Claire yn canolbwyntio ar y dyniaethau, ond bod ni'n trio mewnoli yr egwyddorion a'r camau maen nhw'n mynd trwyddyn nhw, bod yn ar draws y meysydd dysgu a profiad, ond hefyd bod y grŵp dylunio yn dylunio'r cwricwlwm yn gweld, yn edrych ar y camau a gweld sut mae hwn yn mynd i adeiladu fyny neu datganiad fyny'n drafod wedyn. A'r grŵp asesu meddwl, sydd ni'n dal hwn fel cyfanwaith i ddal y dysgwr ar y camau oedd Nicola a mae Claire yn drwy siŵr yn yr rhannu. Felly, ymddiriadau am dorri ar draws yma, Claire, ond jyst bod ni gyd yn trio prosesu y camau dyn ni'n cerdded trwyddyn nhw wrth i ni dod i ddeall mwy am y strwythur. Diolch i ti.
Diolch. Ydych chi'n gallu gweld y cyflwyniad y PowerPoint, ia? Oce. Reit, bore da yn bawb, am braf gweld pawb yma eto bore yma. Felly dwi yn mynd i ategu be mae Nicola newydd ddangos i chi, ond jyst efallai rhoi ffordd gwahanol i edrych ar sut da ni'n cynllunio ar gyfer cynnydd yn fan hyn. A fel mae Arwyn newydd dweud, dwi yn mynd i enghreiffio fo gyda maes dysgu a phrofiad y dyniaethau. Ond be newch chi weld fel dwi'n mynd trwy'r cyflwyniad ydy, mae o hefyd gobeithio jyst yn rhoi mwy o gyfle i chi am gyfarwyddo gyda fframwaith y cwricwlwm ac y broses dwi'n mynd trwy byddech chi yn gallu perthnasu hynny gyda'ch maes dysgu a phrofiad chi ac hefyd ar lefel ysgol gyfan hefyd. So felly, os I jyst canolbwyntio jyst i ddechrau yn fan hyn ynglyn â'r maes dysgu a phrofiad dyniaethau. Pan ydych chi'n mynd ar hwb ac yn edrych ar y maes dysgu a phrofiad, dwi wedi ffeindio bod yr arweiniad sydd yno wedi bod yn help mawr i ni ddod i adnabod y maes dysgu a phrofiad ac y ffordd da ni angen defnyddio y fframwaith ar gyfer y cynllunio. So felly, ar gyfer dyniaethau fel un enghraifft, mae o yn nodi beth ydy yr disgyblaethau neu'r pynciau sydd yn ffurfio'r maes dysgu a phrofiad yna. A hefyd, wrth gwrs, hefyd gyda'r dyniaethau, mae gyda ni'r elfen statudol hefyd o ran y crefydd, gwerthoedd a moeseg sydd angen i ystyried wrth gynllunio yn y maes dysgu a phrofiad. Ond mi fydd mae gan bob maes dysgu a phrofiad ei gofynion unigryw eu hunan hefyd, a mae hynny wedi ei nodi ar hwb. Ac so jyst aros ar yr elfen yna i ddechrau yn fan hyn, lle dwi wedi gweld o ran y fframwaith ar hwb sydd yn help mawr wrth ystyried y cynllunio ydy yr rhan 5 ar gyfer o fewn maes dysgu a phrofiad, lle mae teitl dylunio eich cwricwlwm. A mae hwnna sydd yn nodi hefyd y pethau sydd angen i chi ystyried ac efallai sy'n ei pethau chydig bach yn fwy unigryw i bob maes dysgu a phrofiad. So jyst yr enghraifft o'r dyniaethau eto'n fan hyn, mae bob un wedi nodi fel mae Nicola newydd dweud hefyd, mae pwrpas ein cwricwlwm ni yn dealluogi bob un plentyn a person ifanc yng Nghymru i wireddu'r 4 diben, ac mae angen i ni i gofio bod ni'n cynllunio gyda hynny, a dyna be mae'r Athro Donaldson wastad wedi bod yn atgoffa ni pan da ni bod yn cydweithio gyda fo hefyd. Ond ar ran y dyniaethau, mae o yn nodi hefyd y dylwn ni defnyddio'r datganiadau o'r hyn sy'n bwysig mewn ffordd holistaidd, ac dylai bod ni ddim yn ystyried a cynllunio gyda nhw fel datganiadau ar wahân. A gyda bob maes dysgu a phrofiad, mae angen i ni i galluogi disgyblion i wneud y cynnydd yna ar ran y gwybodaeth, y sgiliau a profiadau dysgu da ni yn cynllunio ar ei gyfer nhw. Ac bod ni yn rhoi o yn ei cyd-destun lleol ni, ond yn gwneud y cysylltiadau cenedlaethol o byd eang na. A wedyn o ran y dyniaethau sydd yn unigryw dyniaethau, mae angen i ni ystyried y cysyniad o gynefin hefyd wrth i ni i gynllunio yr maes dysgu a phrofiad yma. Ond fel da chi'n gweld yn ymwybodol yn barod, nes da chi ddim wedi cael cyfle i fynd i edrych yn ddofn ar hwb, mi fydd yna arweiniad unigryw ar gyfer bob maes dysgu a phrofiad, a dyna lle dwi wedi gweld fy hun yn darllen hwnna ac yn gyfarwyddo yn help i gael y dealltwriaeth yna ar gyfer y gofynion cynllunio. So felly, jyst symud ymlaen, mae'r sleidiau rwan yn mynd i fod ar wahân yn y Gymraeg ac y Saesneg, a na i barhau i gyflwyno yn y Gymraeg a na i ddangos y sleidiau yn Saesneg. So beth sydd gyda ni fel rhan o'r cwricwlwm hefyd ydy yr egwyddorion cynnydd, the principles of progression. Ac mae rhain yn mynd i fod yn rhan o cod cynnydd y fydd yn elfen statudol ar gyfer y cwricwlwm hefyd. Ond be mae'r egwyddorion yma yn gofyn i ni wneud ydy mae cynnydd sydd wrth galon gwaith cynllunio'r cwricwlwm, ac mae o'n gyfrifoldeb arno ni i sicrhau ein bod ni yn cynllunio cwricwlwm sydd yn galluogi bob un dysgwr i wneud cynnydd ar hyd y continuum 2 i 16 oed yna, ac ein bod ni yn sicrhau trwy gynllunio'r cynnydd yna bod ni'n galluogi bob un plentyn i wireddu'r 4 diben yna. Ac Bydd rhaid i ni fel ymarferwyr i sicrhau bod ni yn cynllunio y dysgu ac addysgu sy'n galluogi bob un plentyn i wneud y cynnydd ar draws y continiwm yna hyd at yr 16 oed. Ac o ran yr egwyddorion, maen nhw i lawr yn y 5 pwynt bwled ar y gwylod yr sleid yn fan hyn, ond maen nhw yn y canllawia'r cwricwlwm ar hwb i chi hefyd, ond fel da ni cynllunio gydag oedran ac aeddfedrwydd plentyn ein bod ni yn sicrhau bod ni yn cynllunio ar gyfer y dyfnder yna o sgiliau a gwybodaeth sydd angen i blant wrth iddyn nhw i ddatblygu. Ac beth sydd yn galluogi ni ac yn cynorthwyo ni fel athrawon i allu gwneud yr cynllunio yna ydy, fel mae Nicola newydd ddangos rwan, ydy y datganiadau o'r hyn sy'n bwysig. Mae yna 27 datganiad o'r hyn sy'n bwysig yn y cwricwlwm. Mae yna niferoedd gwahanol o fewn bob maes dysgu a phrofiad, oherwydd dyna sydd yn berthnasol ac yn bwysig ar gyfer y maes dysgu a phrofiad yna. Ac mae hynny'n iawn yn dydi, oherwydd mae bob un wedi cael ei gynllunio'n unigryw ar gyfer y gofynion a beth sy'n galluogi y plant i wneud y cynnydd sydd angen o ran y gwybodaeth a sgiliau o fewn y meysydd yno. Ond be mae'r cwricwlwm yn gofyn i ni ydy bod gyda ni yr dealltwriaeth dofn yna o beth ydy'r datganiadau'r hyn sy'n bwysig, ond hefyd beth sydd gyda ni o ran y datganiadau yna wedyn ydy 5 cam cynnydd, ac o fewn y 5 cam cynnydd yna mae'r disgrifiadau dysgu. Ac dyna ydy'r dealltwriaeth o'r rheina sydd angen ni fel ymarferwyr i gael cyn bod ni yn gallu cynllunio beth ydy'r profiadau dysgu ac addysgu da ni yn mynd i gynllunio a cynnig i ddisgyblion i sicrhau bod nhw yn gwneud cynnydd ac yn gwireddu'r 4 diben yna. So felly dwi yn mynd i ailadrodd y fan hyn hefyd be mae Nicola wedi dangos, ond dwi wedi i'w wneud o yn cyd-destun y dynieitha fan hyn. So mae gyda ni datganiad yr hyn sy'n bwysig, mae ymholi archwilio ac ymchwilio yn ysbrydoli chwilfrydedd am y byd ei orffennol, ei bresennol a'i dyfodol, yn yr sleid Saesneg i fyny fan hyn. A be dwi wedi gwneud yn fan hyn hefyd ydy uwcholeuo fan hyn, fel beth ydy'r cysyniadau a'r sgiliau o fewn yr datganiad yna sydd angen i blant i gallu datblygu a gwneud cynnydd yn nhw ar draws y continiwm y 2 i 16 oed. Ac beth mae'r paragraff yma yn ei wneud hefyd ydy, dyma ydy'r rhesymeg ar gyfer y datganiad yr hyn sy'n bwysig sydd yn nodi pam bod y datganiad yma yn bwysig, pam bod angen i ddisgyblion i gallu i wneud y cynnydd a datblygu gyda fo. Ac hwn hefyd sydd yn cysylltu gyda y 4 diben ac os ydyn ni defnyddio hwn ar gyfer y cynllunio, dyma sut ydyn ni yn galluogi ddisgyblion i wireddu'r 4 diben yn y maes dysgu a phrofiad yma. So, felly, os rhaid fynd â hwn chydig bach yn bellach yn fan hyn wedyn, so, un ffordd da ni wedi bod yn gweithio arno fo yn gwe yn fan hyn ydy yn torri fo i lawr i edrych ar gam gynnydd o fewn yr datganiadau o'r hyn sy'n bwysig. Herwydd fel mae Nicola newydd ddweud hefyd, mae yna 5 cam cynnydd ac mae yna 2 mlynedd o gynnydd yn y fras rhwng nhw. Da ni'n gwybod bod disgyblion yn gwneud cynnydd ar y raddfau gwahanol, ond yn fras oherwydd bod o wedi cael ei nodi dyfodol llwyddiannus, mae cam cynnydd 1 yn fras lle mae plentyn tua 5 oed yn cyrraedd, cam cynnydd 2 yn 8 oed, cam cynnydd 3 yn 11 oed, cam cynnydd 4 yn 14 a wedyn cam cynnydd 5 erbyn tua 16 oed. Does dim oedran wedi cael ei roi ar y fframwaith, ond maen nhw'n fras yn y cefndir wedi nodi yn dyfodol llwyddiannus. A beth sydd gyda ni cyn cam cynnydd 1 hefyd ydy yr enabling pathways, y dogfen yn fanno sydd angen ystyried wrth i ni gynllunio ar draws y continiwm. Ond hefyd, be mae rhaid i ni fel ymarferwyr sydd yn wahanol yn y ffordd da ni'n gweithio gyda'r cwricwlwm presennol, mae angen i ni gael y dealltwriaeth yna o be mae cynnydd yn edrych ar gyfer plentyn ar draws y continiwm o'r 2 i 16 oed. Ac bod ni ddim jyst yn ystyried fel beth da ni angen gwneud gyda y plant pan maen nhw o'n blaen a ni os ydy o'n dysgu blwyddyn yn yr ysgol gynradd a blwyddyn yn penodol sydd gyda ni o ran dosbarthiadau yn yr uwchradd. Mae'n bwysig bod gyda ni gyd ddealltwriaeth ar draws y continuum o beth i siwrna dysgu plentyn. So bod ni, dyna lle mae'r cydweithio gyda'r cynradd yn digwydd o ran cael y cyd-ddealltwriaeth yna o beth ydy cynnydd ac hefyd bod y cynradd yn ymwybodol o beth ydy gweddill y siwrna ar gyfer disgyblion wrth i ni gynllunio ymlaen ar gyfer y cynnydd maen nhw angen gwneud ar draws continuum. So felly, be dwi wedi cymryd yn fan hyn ar y sleid yma ydy yn ôl at yr datganiad ar hyn sy'n bwysig yn y dynieitha. A wedyn mae gyda ni cam cynnydd 2 i gam cynnydd 3. So fe gallwn ni dadlau mai dyma efallai lle mae elfen pontio cynradd ac uwchradd yn dechrau digwydd. Ac disgrifiad dysgu ar gyfer y cam cynnydd 2 yna ydy I can recognise the difference between the facts and beliefs. A wedyn y cynnydd o fewn y 2 mlynedd yna wedyn I can understand the difference between facts, opinions and beliefs and consider how this may affect the importance and usefulness of evidence. So mae angen i ni allu gael y dealltwriaeth o beth sydd angen i ni gynllunio i alluogi i'r cynnydd yna i ddigwydd o fewn y 2 mlynedd yna a beth ydy'r cynnydd sydd yn digwydd o gam cynnydd 2 i gam cynnydd 3. A mae hynny'n cyd-fynd gyda'r egwyddorion cynnydd yna sydd gyda ni'n y pwyntiau bwled o danodd yn fanno. Ac hefyd, fel mae Nicla wedi gwneud yr gyfatebiaeth yna gyda'r adeilad, mae gyda ni adeilad fan hyn, os ydy'n gwestiwn, os ydy'n adeilad o swyddfeydd, sydd gyda yr 14 llawr yna o beth ydy 14 blwyddyn ysgol o 2-16 oed ar gyfer disgybl. A be mae'r fframwaith y cwricwlwm yn rhoi i ni, mae o'r rhoi i ni lle dylai plentyn fod erbyn y 5 oed, so llawr 5, y llawr 8, y llawr 11, 14 ac 16, ond mae fyny i ni fel ysgolion i allu i gynllunio beth ydy'r camau na sydd angen i blentyn i gyrraedd y lloriau yna yn be mae'r fframwaith yn ei osod i ni, ac i sicrhau bod ni yn cynllunio ar gyfer y dyfnder o sophistigeirwydd yna sydd angen digwydd ar draws y cwricwlwm hefyd. Felly, dwi jyst yn enghreiffio yn fan hyn y ffordd da ni wedi mynd ati yn gwe i wneud hwn. A mae yna, be dwi ddim eisiau cyfleu fan hyn y cam syniad mae nid dulliannau dysgu ydy, a nid ym meini prawf llwyddiant ar gyfer asesu ydy yr datganiadau o'r hyn sy'n bwysig, yr camau cynnydd a'r disgrifiadau dysgu. Mae y fframwaith yno mwyn i roi y cysondeb ar y galluogi ni i gallu gynllunio y cynnydd sydd angen ar gyfer gallu cynllunio y profiadau dysgu sydd angen i ni wneud ar gyfer disgyblion i wneud y cynnydd. So be da ni wedi gwneud yn fan hyn, da ni wedi cael trafodaeth aelodau o tîm cynradd ag uwchradd gwe yn edrych, wel, os ydy cam cynnydd 2 yn nodi hyn ac bod y cynnydd 3 blynedd erbyn cam cynnydd 3, wel, beth ydy'r cynnydd sydd angen digwydd o fewn hynny? Ac be da ni wedi cysylltu gyda'r fan hyn hefyd ydy beth ydy'r datblygiad plentyn sydd yn digwydd fel arfer yn yr oedran yma hefyd o'r 8 i 11 oed. Ac oherwydd mae rhaid i ni gymryd hwnna i ystyried, gallwn ni ddim disgwyl i blentyn i wneud cynnydd yn addysgol os nad ydyn nhw wedi datblygu'n gorfforol yn emosiynol ac o ran datblygiad ei ymenydd nhw hefyd, os nad i hwnna wedi datblygu ganddyn nhw, dydy'r cynnydd addysgol ddim yn gallu digwydd. So mae angen i ni ystyried hynny hefyd. So be da ni wedi mynd ymlaen i wneud yn fan hyn hefyd ydy i edrych ar y cam cynnydd 3 a 4. Mae angen i hwn gael ei wneud ar draws y continuum, fel dwi wedi dweud, y 2-16 oed, ond da ni wedi enghreiffio fan hyn y cam cynnydd 2, 3 a wedyn 3, 4 a hefyd dyna lle mae'r trafodaethau cynradd uwchradd y pontio yn digwydd. So bod y cynradd yn ymwybodol beth ydy taith addysgol plentyn y cynnydd sydd wedi digwydd cyn bod nhw'n cyrraedd yr uwchradd, ond hefyd beth ydy'r cynnydd sydd angen cael ei adeiladu ar ben hynny, a bod ni gyd y cydweithio gyda'n gilydd ar datgloi y cynnydd yno. Felly, dwi'n gobeithio bod hwnna wedi bod yn falla yn rhoi chydig o syniadau chi a falla sut byddech chi yn gallu mynd ati gwneud hwn yn eich rhwydweithio chi rwan ar lefel clwstwr ac ar lefel ysgol. Ac jyst i orffen yn fanno, jyst enghraifft ydi o, da ni'n gwybod yn llwyr ymwybodol mae her amser yn dydi i wneud hyn yn ysgol. Beth sy'n bwysig ydy bod y deialog yna'n digwydd. Os ydych chi'n penderfynu bod chi eisiau gwneud cofnodion bras fel hyn, neu os ydy o jyst ar ffurf deialog rhwng athrawon, mae hwnna yn benderfyniad i chi wneud o fewn eich ysgol, o fewn eich clystyra a'r rhwydweithiau. Yr neges bwysig ydy mae nid ar gyfer mynd i prawf asesu ydy'r rhain, mae ei gael y dealltwriaeth yna o beth ydy'r cynnydd sydd yn digwydd yn y dysgu. Ac mae'r athro Graham Donaldson yma heddiw yma, a gobeithio bod efo yn ategu hefyd, ydy mae o wastad wedi dweud wrthyn ni, dyda ni ddim falla yn y ffordd wedi cynllunio gyda'r cwricwlwm presennol, ddim falla wedi gallu rhoi'r amser yna i wir i ymarferwyr dod at ei gilydd, i wir i drafod beth mae cynnydd yn edrych fel o ran cynllunio beth ydy cynnydd mae plentyn angen i wneud o ran y gwybodaeth a'r sgiliau, ac mae dyma beth mae'r cwricwlwm newydd yn gofyn i ni wneud, i gael y gyd-dealltwriaeth yna, i cael y trafodaeth beth mae cynnydd yn edrych fel, a bod ni wedyn yn defnyddio hwnna fel sylfaen i allu cynllunio profiadau dysgu ac addysgu wedyn i wireddu yr cynnydd yna ac i wireddu y 40. So diolch yn fawr. Dwi'n gwybod dwi'n trosglwyddo drosodd i ti, Eros?
A i fi, Claire, ie. Ne ni. Gai yn y lle cyntaf, diolch yn fawr iawn i'r ddwy na chi am gerdded ni trwy 2 o'r meysydd dysgu profiad a i ddechrau bod ni'n dod i ddeall y sydd ni'n datgloi, y datbacio. Dyma'r ail waith yn mi glywed hwnna, dwi'n dysgu mwy bob tro wrth wrando fo. Beth sy'n haro fi yn fan hyn ydy mwyaf am byd dwi'n ymgyfarwyddo fo'r iaith a'r broses. Mae'n mynd i wneud y darn nesaf dyn ni'n mynd i drafod yno fo, sef y cynllunio ei hun, yn haws fel dwi'n dod yn ymgyfarwyddo wrth yn ymlaenau. Ydy'n bosib rhoi y datganiad o'r Journey to Rollout, sef high level curriculum model yn y chat, fel bod pawb yn gallu i weld o, os di hynny'n bosib, os gwelwch chi'n dda. Dwi'n bwysio ar gael.
Da ni wedi gyrru copi allan o'r agenda i bob aelod neithiwr, felly snadio yn y chat yma gen nhw copi hefyd.
Lovely, diolch ti. Okay, the next part is introducing Professor Graham Donaldson. We're going just to talk through what's in the Journey to Rollout of the expectations for schools in a Welsh Government document to produce a high-level curriculum model to be published for the readiness in 22 or 23, whichever is the adopted year. So Graham, I think we will just have a conversation, and I'll probably be making some reflections as well. Having read what Welsh governments have set out here, what are your views on what should a high-level curriculum model look like, and what are the things that people should really take into account when producing this particular statement or this particular model?
Yes, thank you, Arwen, and good morning, everyone. Can I reiterate? I thought that what we've just heard from Nicola and Claire, I think does a superb job of trying to translate what at first sight can seem quite intimidating into a process that allows all of us as teachers just to engage in a logical thought process that's designed to produce rich learning for young people, learning that will challenge them appropriately, and will allow them to progress as they move through. So when we think about a high-level curriculum statement, I just can't stress strongly enough how important it is for everyone to take time to make sense of the elements in the new curriculum, because there's a lot of new terminology there. There's a lot of different elements there, and at first sight, that can look quite intimidating. But I think both Nicola and Claire have shown how you can use that framework in order to arrive at something which is going to allow young people to have that kind of rich learning experience and to progress in their learning. So I think the first thing about high-level curriculum statement is that we need to be able to illustrate how the flow of learning is going to take place within the school as young people move, both within a given year and through the years. So that notion of the relationship, which we've just been talking about, the relationship between the what matter statements, the progression steps, the descriptions of learning, the principles of progression, as I say, which at first sight can appear this kind of fear quite technical. It shouldn't be technical. This is designed, I think, in order to allow people, teachers, to use their skills to create the kind of rich learning that young people, that we want young people to engage in. So if you feel at the end of the day what you're producing is a highly technical document, we've probably got this wrong. It ought to be a document which speaks to yourselves about the way in which you're going to approach this in order to create the kind of flow that's required. So I think one of the things that needs to happen in the high-level statement is to illustrate how you are going to establish that relationship between areas of learning, the what matter statements, the progression steps, and how you're using the principles of progression to ensure that young people move forward in their learning. And in essence, that's the single most important thing about all of this. In essence, that's what really matters. And therefore, the two presentations which we've just had are right at the heart, I think, of allowing you to produce that high-level statement, because they illustrate at the end of the day where you're going to with this. So the high-level statement should create the context within what we've just heard from Nicola and Claire can actually happen in relation to the curriculum as a whole. I think we've got to be careful about assumptions. So be careful when you've got your high-level curriculum design statement that you don't slip back into assumptions that come from where we've been rather than where we're trying to get to with the curriculum. And again, I think both made this very clear. This is not assessment driven. We've essentially had a curriculum hitherto which was strongly assessment driven. So the way we were designing learning was to get to levels and to assess young people as to where they got to those levels. This is designed to be a curriculum which allows and encourages all of us to develop the kind of pedagogy, the kind of experience for young people that will allow them to progress in their learning. So number one is it's not assessment driven, and don't be very careful in high level statements that it doesn't slip back into how are we going to assess whether they've reached progression step 3? How are we going to assess? These progression steps are meant to be a guide to the way in which young people's learning will progress. It's also not a list of content. At the end of the day, the role of the what matter statements is just so important. If we think about the how this is different from a previous curriculum, if we think about young people as they move into the qualifications phase and they look back on what they've learned, what they've got from the years that precede qualifications, very often what stays with them can be almost random in some cases. Less so in some subjects, some areas like maths, where it's much more clearly a linear build-up. But in other areas of the curriculum, it can almost be random as to what stays with them as they move into the qualifications phase, and then qualifications drive their learning thereafter. And what's gone before can disappear into the ether very quickly. The critical thing about this new curriculum are those what matter statements, because they are saying the time that you've spent in school should leave you with a rich and deep understanding of those fundamental what matter statements, which will stay with you for the rest of your life. They are the essence of learning in those areas of learning and experience, and the whole way in which we approach the design is to allow the curriculum to build, to deepen and broaden their understanding using the principles of progression, become more sophisticated, so that when they move forward, that those what matter statements are the organizers that young people have in their head, with the concepts that underpin those what matter statements that will be with them for the rest of their lives. But they get it, and they've got it in a way that is much more coherent and joined up. So a high-level curriculum statement has got to show the way in which progression is going to build, how you're going to do that, and there's no single model of doing that. There's different ways into this, different ways into it in different areas of learning and experience. But you've got to show what's the process by which you're going to arrive at what happens in a classroom on a day-to-day basis, but not get into the specifics of what's going to happen in a particular way. There's no right answer. It is, and again, I think both of them illustrated a thought process, which is really what we're talking about. The beauty is that the opportunity is there to work collaboratively. So some schools, and Eros, we saw that at the start, some schools had done quite a lot, other schools hadn't done very much. Well, that's great. They can learn from each other. They can build, and what one school has already done can help to inform another school. So the collaborative bit of this process is so important. The mutual learning is so important. It's not people like me. It's not experts that are going to tell you how to do that. It's colleagues working together, applying a relatively straightforward process, understanding the elements in the new curriculum, and using that as an opportunity, not as a straitjacket, but as an opportunity to design the kind of learning that we want to have for our young people. And again, it's so important that those four purposes stay with us as we do that, because very often what we do is to lose the narrative. So again, a high-level curriculum statement is going to illustrate how, in your context, those four purposes are given life, will be given life, as you think through the relationship between what matters, descriptions of learning, progression steps, descriptions of learning, and assessment. It's been really interesting for me because, Successful Futures was produced back in 2015. So we're 6 years away from when Successful Futures was, and a huge amount of water has flowed under the bridge since then. So what you are now working with is not Successful Futures. What you're now working with is the way in which colleagues across Wales have taken that starting point and produced something now which they believe will allow you to produce the kind of rich learning for young people. So the single most important message that I would want to give is, see this as an opportunity. Don't see it as a technical exercise being imposed on you, which somehow or other you've got to learn a whole lot of new tricks and convince everyone that you understand how to use the new terminology. Take time to understand it. Use the kind of thinking that Nicola and Claire have put forward. Learn from colleagues, and think of the high-level curriculum statement. Try and put yourself, stand outside it, and say, if I'm looking at that, yeah, I can see how this school in this context is going to use these bits of architecture to produce really exciting learning for young people. And you can only do that if you think through those relationships. So the single most important thing in a high-level statement is showing how that relationship is going to be established between the various elements in the curriculum. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I want to say any more on that. I mean, it's not, as I say, I'm not. I'm coming at this to some extent as you are. Successful Futures took it so far. I've worked with pioneer schools, and I know the way in which they've approached it. But this is what ends up is not mine. It's very much a process which has been arrived at in a whole variety of different ways. But I really think that the opportunity that the high-level curriculum statement has got to be a powerful way of enabling each school to show how it is going to take the opportunities offered by the new curriculum to produce that rich experience for young people, and that the progression in the young person's learning is going to be very explicit. How are you going to achieve the progression in young people's learning. And that brings together the pedagogy, it brings together assessment, and it brings together descriptions of learning as how is that going to work together. And again, I thought I thought Nicola in particular, where she illustrated the opportunities in the local area to use pedagogy in order to take forward the structure that was there, was a very good example of that. So, I really, as I've said before, and sparing their blushes, I think both Nicola and Claire have done a really, really good job. And I think if people just apply the same kind of thought processes that they've done, pull back from that and think about how did they arrive at what they're doing? That's what high-level curriculum design statement should look like.
Diolch, Graham. Thanks very much, Graham. There's plenty of food for thought in flowing from Nicola and Claire's presentation to what you've shared with us there now. I think I've just written a few things down here. I think your first point about who's it for, I think that's key. So that's got to be personal and local to the school and its community, and parents as well should be understanding, this is what my child will get in this school. So the other danger, the how bit, which is in the journey to rollout, is the process of doing itself. And then I think a future conversation we need to have is how do we translate that statement then into a high-level curriculum model, which shifts us from the presence of an assessment-driven curriculum that we're so used to. And I think that's going to be an interesting debate for this group, especially the curriculum design group. It's also across the OLEs, how we shift from the direction and the vision for the school and its community and its clusters of schools in some particular examples, then into if we go through the levels, what does the actual detail of going down into, we're so used to schemes of work, teacher planning and so on, so we've got to that's got to be a conversation we've got to really get into the context of the curriculum. I think another key points that you made today and you made before, this is an evolvement as well, isn't it? It's not we're not looking for a revolution by September 2022, but this is evolvement of understanding and experiences that we're going through. There is a danger, isn't there, that we write this statement and the initial model for an external audience, such as the inspectorates, or for schools to think that we in Gway, and I think we are in the same page as yourself. We want to see, never mind the content. If it's 30 pages long, then I've got a good curriculum statement model. And so what would be your views on, on the level, what high level for some people? We've seen it over the, if we can cast our minds back into previous iterations of certain documents, they started high level and then individual schools have taken on another draft and added things on and added things on, and then they become War and Peace kind of documents which nobody picks up and reads. And we've got to be wary of the inspections that people will read if a school is judged positively, that people will pick up a statement and will try and copy that statement instead of making it very personal to their own. How would you respond to some of those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the high-level curriculum statement is working, and as you say, it should be accessible by different audiences. So you would really want whoever's reading it to look at it, and their reaction should be, wow, wow, that looks really great. That looks, I can see, if I'm a parent and I look at that, if my child has that experience during its time at school, that will be fantastic. So on the other hand, if it's as you say, a very long technical document that tries to bring in all the moving parts that are there, and as arrows flying all over the place in terms of the interrelationship. That may be necessary, as working documents beyond it, but that's not what you need for a high-level curriculum document. You need something that is actually should be quite inspiring, I think, as a document. It should inspire those who read it, but it should also inspire those who are creating it. And I just can't stress too strongly, if this curriculum is going to work, it will only work because we take the opportunities it offers to create really rich and exciting experiences for our young people. And it's not, as has been said a number of times, it's not an assessment driven curriculum. It's a pedagogy driven curriculum, and it's a curriculum that's not driven by the accumulation of knowledge in terms of facts. It's a curriculum that's driven by depth of conceptual understanding, which encompasses lots of facts, but it's not the facts that we're going to assess at the end of the day. It's the extent to which within those what matter statements and the concepts that underpin them, again, very well illustrated by this morning. If young people leave school, or go on to the next stage in school with that, then that will seem to me to be the kind of thing that will be a huge step forward in terms of learning, so that the learning doesn't, it's not all that stuff we've done then, and then we do the serious stuff when we come to qualifications. This bit has got to give the youngsters the foundations of learning and of understanding and knowledge, which will live with them for the rest of their lives, and that's what the curriculum is intended to do. So conveying that in an exciting way that shows the process you're going through, but don't make it too technical, don't make it a very long, don't feel you have to produce something which looks impressive at first glance and then becomes impenetrable once you start to get into it. It's something that should provide the basis for what goes beyond. And if you're talking to inspectors or anyone else, of course you should have the way of going behind what's in the high-level document to show what that means, how you've thought that through, why it looks like that. But you don't have to show your working, if you like, in the high-level document. You just have to be ready to talk about it to an inspector or anyone else, to show that the substance behind this, it's not just a rhetorical document you produced, it's substance which is going to be given life in terms of what happens in the school. I mean, I think there's really, I keep on saying it, I'm sorry, but I think the opportunity is there. We just must take it. We just must take the opportunity. And if we get it right, we'll have youngsters who are intrinsically satisfied by learning. They don't learn because there's a test. We create learning when it's intrinsically satisfying and it's building progressively as they move forward. And that's what lifelong learning is about. The youngsters move, beyond the stage that we're talking about, and they've got the intrinsic satisfaction, the buzz that you get when you do something difficult and you learn it and they manage to do it. Well, that's actually what learning ought to be in school. Not why am I learning this? It's not in the test. Why are you asking me to do this? That's not going to be an exam. Why am I learning this? It's designed, that's what the what matter statements are designed to do. So, sorry, it's a very long response to your question, Arwen, but essentially, I would say, keep it simple, make it inspiring. Have something that if you look at it, you say, wow, if my kids do that, that will be fantastic.
It's a great message there, Graham. Inspiration, aspiration, that's a message for each one of the OLEs, and building that up into the whole school curriculum statement and modelling as we go forward. Right, I'm looking at the clock. We're going to have a very, I hope you've got fast boiling kettles, because we'll try and come back and start at 10:45, if that's okay with everybody, so we can try and remain as close to track as possible, and thank the three contributors. There's plenty of food for thought. So as you're boiling your kettle and drinking your tea or coffee or whatever it is, I'm sure we need something to get the cogs moving, because there's plenty of thinking to do after paned. Yeah, diolch yn fawr i chi. We'll see you in 7. Mae rhaid mi ddeud bod y sŵn yr Americanwraig yn bach yn intimidating am y recording in progress cyn rwy'n agor i geg pob tro, mae rhaid i mi ddeud, ond dyna ni. Gweld rhaid i chi fod tegell sydd yn berwyn gyflym iawn fan hyn, da chi wedi cyrraedd yn ôl yn ymhell ymlaen i rhaid i chi wedi hanner yfed eich paned eisoes neu bod gyda chi coffi on tap yn y cefndir lle ni ddim yn gallu weld yn fan hyn beth bynnag. Llawer iawn i ni fel amdano yn y sesiwn gyntaf ne, ydyn ni wedi drosglwyddo i rwth mewn eiliad. Dyn ni'n ymwybodol yn y grŵp yma ac yn y grwpiau lleol. Mae gennym ni does athrawon dosbarth, mae gennym ni bobl sydd yn arwain cyfnod allweddol, yn arwain yn rheolwyr canol yn yr uwchradd i benaethiaid sydd yn brofiadol iawn yn y maes. Felly mae'n bwysig iawn dydy bod ni'n gweithio ar y lefelau yna i gyd yn trafodaethau ni. Be ydy'r anghenion yr athro dosbarth, ond hefyd be ydy'r anghenion y strwythur a'r system wrth ni gynllunio y profiadau yma ar gyfer yn plant yn pobl ifanc ni. A'r ddau air gan Graham, aspiration ac inspiration yn mynd i fod yn allweddol yn y trafodaethau. Felly drosodd i Ruth a gobeithio bod pawb yn ôl efo eu paned ac yn barod am y darn nesaf.
Diolch Arwyn. Bore da pawb. Hi everybody. Just a few minutes from me then really just to get you into the doing and the talking and the discussing and having taken into consideration what we've heard this morning. I'm just going to share my screen if I may, just so that I can show. Is that come up? Can you see that? Lovely, diolch Arwyn. Lovely. Okay, so going back to the roles and expectations that we shared last week, we're aware that the brief talked about, the whole year and it talked about the whole term. We're really keen that we don't lose our way and that we do take our small steps to work together and collaboratively to move, as Arwyn has said, the whole system across. So what we've done here on the next 3 slides is just to give each group, because we have the AOLE groups, we have the curriculum design group and the assessment group. We've given each group then a specific focus for the next month in effect, so that by November, by our meeting then, we were in a position to be able to share our learning on each of these slides that are coming up now. So for each of these 6 AOLE groups, what we'd really like you to focus on, please, is that examples and of unpacking statements of what matters within your areas of learning and experience. We've seen 2 examples, as we've said this morning, of Claire and Nicola sharing, the process of how it can be done. You undoubtedly will have other examples, and there's an opportunity now to develop those and to share them together, both at a regional level when we come back, but in the first instance to look at local levels. And as has been said on the Padlet, it's very clear that people are wanting to share and understand what it means. So that I'm sure the conversations at local level will be really interesting. We've given you some examples of what it might look like in the lighter blue box, but those are just there as examples of what it could do. Please, be more creative and innovative and think of some other suggestions. So as I say, for the AOLE groups, please, your focus is to look at examples of how these statements of what matters can be unpacked to really pick up those key concepts and the knowledge and learning and skills and experiences as we go through. For each of these, we've got some series of questions that we've taken from the journey to rollout, and the facilitators in the group have those questions. You may feel that they're of use, you may not, you may come up with some better and some more pertinent ones yourselves, but they are there should you wish. Moving to the next group, the assessment group. Again, there was a couple of points within the brief for this term. What we'd really like the assessment group to focus on, please, is developing that shared understanding of progression. We understand and recognise that before we can assess, we need to understand that progression. And again, in that light blue box, we've just put down some examples of what that might look like when you come back and pick that up at local level, back to share at regional level. We have in the questions there taken from Journey to Rollout, we've also included the questions that we as a service worked through when we were considering and creating the think pieces on the other different aspects. You may find that they are of use, looking at the perspectives of different people, the perspective of the learner, the perspective of the teacher, the leader, the parent. And again, they're there with the facilitator should you wish. So the assessment group, please, really focusing on what that shared understanding of progression could could look like for you at your local level, and what it could look like, you know, and sharing it back then at regional level. And then moving to the curriculum design group, and again recognising that the curriculum design group and assessment group will naturally work closely. We've heard this morning about the high level curriculum model. We're really interested, please, if the curriculum design group could focus on, in the first instance, you know, really trying to help us, and not just us, I mean the collective us, you know, the region, understand what it is, and even what it isn't, and then examples of what this then could look like. As I say, there are questions there from rollouts that your facilitator has. So for the next hour then, please, if you could just consider the themes and the questions that we've posed on these slides. As a regional group, are there consistent messages to be shared, you know, with your local groups back within that theme? Just something that some clear non-negotiables, if you like, or some clear lines that really need to be shared across the region to be translated back at a local level. And, you know, your expectations of your local discussions, I'm sure, will come up. We're aware that operationally, there still may be some questions that you have about how those local groups might run. We'll pick those up with you right at the very end. What we're really keen to do is that you can focus on the actual content of the discussion as opposed to the operational bits. But obviously, we'll facilitate and make those as simple as possible. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm really hoping that you've been able to note down, you know, that particular focus for your group, and we will move and we will look to have an hour in your group. So we will return back to the main room at 11:52. We will stay here. I know last week we had a few, or last time we met, we had a few people coming back and just logistically wanting. So again, and when, I'm sure you will work your magic and move everybody across as needed. But should there be any queries, please come back to the main room and we'll allow you to be back. So diolch I bawb, a welwch chi mewn awr. Well, croeso nôl. Welcome back, everybody. You may felt that hour whizzed by very quickly. It did. In fact, we've cut it short ever so slightly by a few minutes because we're just very keen that we've got a chance to synthesize and really come back together as a full group to hear and reflect and, you know, ensure that we're all in the right place to move forward. I will go around. I don't think we've got time for all 8 groups, but certainly we've got some time to hear some main points, I believe. So I'm going to turn to curriculum design first, please, and ask, is there any, you know, points coming through there, any main messages, any to reflect the discussions that have been had there. So I'm sure through our curriculum design, is anybody from curriculum design able to offer some feedback there, please? My Stella. Oh, dyna ni. Hi, Stella.
Okay. Yes, we've had very useful discussion this morning. We've been discussing, I think we could talk about the definition of a high level curriculum model for a few days before we go anywhere else, really. But we've had a valuable discussion around that. We've talked about, or various people within the group discussed what they were working on at the moment, and you could feel from what they were saying about the work they were doing in their school that, you know, maybe a high level curriculum or a part of a high level curriculum was sort of formulating itself there already, so that people would have things to share without really realizing that they've got some valuable stuff out there. I think people were also really thinking about operational matters, about how they were going to facilitate their local groups and what the messages they would take from this group there, and how they would facilitate the work within the local groups as well. So it's just really people putting their toes in, having a good think about how they're going to do it. We came out at the end with a possible agenda for discussion that everybody was quite happy with. Some suggestions from the group, so I think people are quite clear of where they're going to go in their local groups now, and people maybe not being overly concerned about the quality of any documentation to be produced within the next couple of weeks. We're just very aware that we are going through a process at the moment and not really focusing on end products by any means.
Diolch, Stella, and I think there's some key points there coming through from as you say, dipping the toe and starting. I don't know, Graham, if you want to come in and offer any reflections on some of the points that have been talked there.
No, I would simply reinforce that. I think that we're now at a stage where just getting sleeve rolled up and having a go, and in that process, things will emerge, issues will emerge, and hopefully, as we do that, will then the notion of the appropriate level for high level, because nobody knows that, I mean, there's no right answer to this. There isn't a kind of template that says this is a high level curriculum model. So I think, as I said earlier, it's more engaging in the process, getting the sleeves rolled up, identifying where the tricky bits are, and then trying to capture the relationships between the different elements that are going to lead to the kind of outcomes that we want for young people. So I think there's no substitute for just getting on with it. Just and the issues will emerge, and we can chat about them and discuss them and try and resolve them together. And there'll be tricky things, and all of this is bound to be.
Ruth, I probably just add, people got to be confident that this is a safe space to put the problems on the table. The things that you find tricky, others might have had the solution. This is not a marking homework for next time kind of approach, is it? This is because we don't, this is about, what are the issues? Let's learn this together, and, let's share different solutions. So use it as a safe space to bring those issues back, because, we'll have a group expertise rather than individual expertise. I think that's my thinking behind it. Yeah.
No, cytuno. Thank you. Thanks, Graham and Adwyn. And I think we've had such a resource and a power and energy in this room. We've always, the local groups are about widening those conversations and bringing more people in. And I think, from the Padlets, you could see that people are keen to have that conversation. We had over 260 people come to those sessions on Monday. I think, we can build on that in small steps. So diolch. Now try at Assessi. If I go to assessment group, is there anybody there? I know Maya and David from Gwera there. If there's anybody that's got just some points to offer from the assessment group.
I can talk because I chaired it.
Oh, hi Tracy.
Hello. Well, I think, first of all, I think we need to be renamed as the progression and assessment group, I think, because we're not just looking at assessment, we're looking at progression and the culture of progression as well. So then we talked about what actual progression means, and we don't mean ticking off the progression steps, but what does that culture of progression mean in a school? So we threw lots and lots of ideas about, and it was really interesting to hear from a secondary perspective and a primary perspective, and then how is progression moving from knowledge into skills, into application of skills, into extending those skills across different AOLEs. And then basically the progression steps look after themselves. So that you've got secure evidence that when they come to look at progression step 3, you're not just ticking off, well, we can do progression step 3. So, and then we also looked at reporting to parents on progression and what that might mean. And one of the things which I just shared with my school is we actually asked parents a few years ago, what do you want your end of year report to look like? So we did the statutory things, but then shaped it to what the parents wanted, because it's an awful lot of work to do if they're never going to be read and acted upon. And then we started to look at progression and learner effectiveness as well, because we wanted to start moving a locus of control over learning from the teachers to the pupils to fulfill the purpose of ambitious and capable learners as well. So what does that look like, progression in learner effectiveness? So it's not just, child puts the hand up, teacher goes to the child. We're developing those children's skills to be ambitious and capable learners as well. We never really got onto what we're going to talk about with the local groups, because it was such a good and interesting and rich conversation that we had. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything that I've missed.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, I obviously could have let you for another hour carry on there. Sounds like, you know, you were really getting into the depths of the, you know, and certainly your comment about changing the name of the group. I think, you know, we can certainly take that, because, you know, it's an understanding of progression first. I'll offer Graham, don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Other than say I agree. I mean, I think that the progression assessment are two sides of the same coin, and therefore you can't think of it one without the other. Therefore, to put them together makes sense.
Lovely, thanks. Alvin, did you want to offer anything? No. Okay. Thank you for that. And as I say, we'll pick up. We have got time for maybe just one of the AOLEs. Is there anything specifically from one of the areas of learning experience that felt they just want to? I mean, your challenge was the area, the statements of what matters. I don't know if there's anybody specifically wants to come back and offer a reflection from that group. No pressure to, but there is time for one if just looking through. I can't see any hands up. No.
Can I make a request, Ruth, to the AOLEs? We've had two of them unpacked this morning, and what I'm learning every time is probably what's reflecting what Tracy was saying. I'm getting to understand the process and understand the language and how the bits of them fit together. The more I hear of it, I'm beginning to get a bit more comfortable. You know, are there individuals in the other four AOLEs? I think it would be really nice to unpack two AOLEs next time, two AOLEs the following time, just to give us, again, understanding the AOLE context, but also to, again, as we're familiar with the process. So when it comes to curriculum design and assessment, you know, we are familiar, you know, we're getting more and more familiar with the language. It just reinforces to everybody in the group how we go through the various things. So the chairs of, I'm trying to get work 6 minus 2, it leaves us with 4, doesn't it? So it's apart from humanities and science and technology, if there are people in the other 4, and, you know, I find it extremely valuable just to really understand, you know, the individual AOLEs, and Graham's points about people rolling up their sleeves and just, you know, just give an example. This is how we see it. I think that'd be really, really useful. You know, we've got some elements like, you know, maths, and then you've got the language literacy one, communication one. Again, you know, it'd be interesting to hear, you know, those being unpacked, as well as, you know, something that is more relatively new to all of us would be, you know, have the well-being elements be coming together. So I'd really welcome if people, you know, would have that conversation within a group. If it's not within the group, they know of somebody who can. And I just find it extremely valuable to hear you know, to see the process. And I think back to what Stella was saying as well. If there are people who've given it a bit of thought on curriculum, higher curriculum model, it would just be good in due course just to see, okay, it can look a bit like that, can it? So, you know, it just helps us all turn language into a bit of reality. I don't know if Graham wants to come in there at all.
No, again, Arwen, I think just simply to agree. I think that at this stage it's try things out, try and identify what seems promising, what doesn't seem promising, try to identify where the difficult bits are, and share them. There's no right, no wrong in all of this. It's a learning process that we're all engaged in. So we just need to be as open as possible about, you know, where we're finding this difficult, where we're finding promising ways forward.
Sorry, Ruth, just to thank Tracy and the group and assessments, because yes, they are your groups to develop and evolve and make use of, you know, and to rename it and rebrand it makes perfect sense. Yeah. So it helps us move from the present into the future, doesn't it? Yeah. So I think that kind of thinking, it will always be welcomed. And, we can have the debate if we don't agree with something or have a different view. We can always have that debate and discussion, because Graham's, I think what I've learned a lot from Graham, there's not going to be one answer to this process at the end of it. There's going to be several different successful models that can be put together.
Lovely, diolch. Okay then, well, if there's no feedback specifically from an AOLE at this point, we will, look to just offer some final next steps and, bring the session to a close. There's been an awful lot shared this morning, and it feels like an awful long time ago that Eros shared the team space right at the outset, and hopefully now there's even more sort of rationale for having that common area for us to be able to put documents there and have that as a almost like a draft room, something, even though we've obviously shared out some of the tasks. I think the collaborative energy and the sharing and the really importance of coming back together to bring the learning from each of those bits together will be really key. And certainly that Teams area offers us an opportunity to keep on, keep that up to date. In that Teams area, then we will ensure by Friday that you're all a member. And those of you who've shared the hub addresses, I think most of those are now. You'll have a notification that you're part of that team. You will have access across all of the areas, and I hope that then shows the transparency between the groups that you can see, because we don't want to create that silo mentality. We want to be able to share across. We'll also upload there the details of your local groups, because I know that's something that you're all keen to have. And as Eero said, we're still just trying to finalise, but we will have that cut off and we will update, and you will have those local group names and contact details for you to be able to make contact with the local colleagues to arrange the first get together, if you like. You have certainly got support from GWER, and you've got GWER facilitators that were in the room today, and they will certainly be there alongside you for those local meetings in the first instance. And the communication between yourselves as a group and also ourselves will be key to ensuring that success as we go along. And we do understand the challenge at the moment of the COVID and the high numbers and the real challenge of supply. So you have release time. You should all have funding for the 15 days in your budget that's been received. If these meetings need to be flexible, if they need to be recorded, if you need help from us to make sure that everybody's having reach to these, if they need to be after school for just to get the conversation started, then we'll be as flexible as we can with you, and we'll support you wherever. But as Aaron says, this is a safe space. Please come back to us and let us know so that we can work with you to find those solutions together. It's been a really productive morning from where I've sat. It's been very feel privileged to be part of such an energy and such a commitment. So I'm hoping that by the time we come back together in November, there'll be far more learning and sharing to keep us moving forward. There's no more comments from me, apart from just to say to thank the business team, or Gallum, because I know logistically how challenging this is to bring such a group of people together, and certainly thank everybody for their contributions. Diolch I cyfieithu heddiw. Aaron, I'm not sure if there's anything else, or Eros, have I missed?
Yeah, I just probably add, Ruth, if some of these groups have met this morning, before they go local, they might want to, we want to come together one more time just to, we need to make, I was just picking up a bit from Stella and a bit from Tracy possibly. We haven't got into what we'll actually be doing, because we've been trying to articulate the issues and where we're at. And I would suggest then that you pencil another session between yourselves so that you're all comfortable, that you're having a similar conversation. I think from my personal, from a GWER perspective, not a personal perspective, from a GWER perspective, as these things begin to roll out, hopefully there'll be more people wanting to join the local groups, and we would want that to be encouraged as well, because the more reach there is, I think the more valuable it will be in due course. So that's something for us to think about as well. Yeah. Felly, jyst i ategu, neu jyst droi'r Gymraeg i orffen. Gael diolch o galon i bawb, yn arbennig i Nicola, Claire a Graham am eu cyflwyniadau yn y sesiwn gyntaf yna, ac i chi gyd am i ddefnyddio iaith, Graham, bod chi'n torchi llewis, ac i ddefnyddio idiom Cymraeg da, pan mae cae wedi cael ei aredig ac yn llawn cerig, y lle gored i dechrau wrth eich traed. A dwi'n meddwl, a dyna di'r maint y das, gwneud bod ni'n dechrau wrth yn traed, be dyn ni'n wybod, a dod â fo nôl i fan hyn i rannu. Dwi'n meddwl bod pwynt mae Graham wedi wneud ydy, peidiwch o disgwyl dod yn ôl bob tro, rhaid i ni gwneud rhywbeth yn berffaith, ddim dyna ydi o. Rhannu'r problemau, wrth gweithio trwy'r problemau, mi ddawn ni ddatrysiadau gwahanol ac ar draws yr Rhanbarth yn does, mae gen ni ysgolion bach iawn i ysgolion mawr iawn, a mae'r cyfrwng yn gallu bod yn wahanol ynddyn nhw hefyd. Felly mae hynny'n i gyd yn mynd yn rhan o'r heriau sydd gennym ni fel grŵp strategol yn y canol yn fan hyn yn gweithio yn gilydd. Felly diolch o galon i chi, ddim gwybod wedi'n, os ydych chi'n cyfri amser, neu mae rwan yn hanner amser, ydych chi hanner ffordd drwy'r wythnos, felly does dim ffordd gwell dwi'n meddwl i orffen yr wythnos, mae cyfarfod sydd bod yn hynod o gadarnhaol o lle dyn ni'n sefyll. Felly i berson sydd bod yn gweithio yn y cynradd, mae rwan amser chwarae cinio i chi, a gobeithio gewch chi ginio a cyfle i mlacio cyn dechrau yn y pnawn. Diolch yn iawn i chi, cymwch ofal i gyd, hwyl fawr.